Welcome to the Revolutionaries of Wellbeing podcast. I'm founder and host, Sarah McGuinness. The Revolutionaries of Wellbeing, or ROW, is a community of wellbeing managers from organisations around the globe. At ROW, we develop you as a wellbeing leader, giving you a powerful support network, professional development, and workplace wellbeing solutions so that you can focus on giving your employees the right support at the right time. To be stronger, better, and faster at improving wellbeing in your workplace, professional development is key. These discussions on workplace wellbeing are designed to inspire, share ideas, and raise awareness of important issues we can all take action on. The interviews are recorded as part of our monthly Wellbeing Wednesday webinars. In this episode, we're joined by mental health advocate Jimi Hunt to explore the concept of mental health literacy and why language matters. While mental health awareness has improved over the years, there is still a gap between knowing about mental health and taking actions towards better mental health. We discuss how to obtain and maintain positive mental wellness, how to understand mental health problems and seek support, and how to decrease stigma in the workplace. Jimi is the co-founder of the charity Live More Awesome and is most well known for his work in reducing the stigma around mental health in a distinctly colourful way. He's a Guinness World Record holder, 2 times TEDx speaker, a regular panellist on morning TV and radio, and has been the subject of a documentary and 2 feature episodes of a major US network show, highlighting his unique and successful exploits into raising awareness of mental health.
Nothing really drives me anymore. I did have a savior complex back in the day. When I first started this, I wanted to help everybody and save everybody. And now, I don't know really how to put this in a PC kind of way, but it ain't my job. My job isn't to save anyone, isn't to help anybody. I have one simple job, and my job is to help myself and to move myself up the mental fitness continuum. And the more that I do that, the more I work on myself, the more I discover things. And then when I discover things, I just think it's a nice thing to do, which is tell people what I discovered about, working on myself. And then the only thing I happen to do is I happen to have a reasonably good ability to be able to explain these concepts to people in a way that they go, oh, yeah, okay, I get that, which is, I kind of call myself a translator. I mean, I'm not coming up with the science on this, but I'm definitely translating it in a way that people can understand it a lot better and a lot easier, because the science is sometimes quite abstract and convoluted and all over the place. So that's all I'm trying to do. My advocacy is really about just, I want to help people. That's nice and that's good, but my job first and foremost is to help myself.
I think I just want to jump to that bit around that translator, because I think that's a really important point in all of this, because you only have to jump on LinkedIn at the moment, especially with the country having gone through lockdown and its various levels now, to see there is an absolute overwhelming information. So tell me, how do you kind of help people make sense of that and actually make sense of it for themselves?
Well, it's about really making sure that you boil stuff down to the lowest, the minimum effective dose, basically. I was having a good chat with Richie Hardcore on his podcast the other day about the rise of the mental health influencer. And that's a whole thing. Back in my day, it was the opposite. I was going to get in trouble for saying this sort of stuff, not actually be rewarded for saying it. And so now on Instagram and on TikTok and all sorts, you've got all of these people with this overload of these are the things you should be doing to make yourself better. And so that can get overwhelming to a lot of people, to understand the wheat from the chaff and what's actually effective and what I should actually be doing. And so a lot of what I do is sort of try and figure out, there's a lot of nice to haves and things that we can do later on, but what things are at our core being that we can work on to get us to a point, then we're able to choose from all the different things.
Is that what you're alluding to when you talk about the mental fitness continuum?
Yeah, sort of. So I guess, so the mental fitness continuum came about 6 years ago to me in regards to understanding that in society we were sort of always given two options. You're either mentally well or you're mentally ill. That was the binary on or off switch. And I came to understand that when I was mentally ill, I then did enough work to become mentally well and flicked that switch. And then I thought, oh, well, I'm good from here because I'm not mentally ill anymore. And obviously that sort of dawned on me that, I'd got myself out of mental illness, but I still wasn't actually mentally well. And that was the understanding that it's not this binary thing, it's a continuum of mental fitness. And the thing about mental fitness is that it works exactly the same as physical fitness. You put in small amounts of effort consistently over time, you'll get fitter, you'll get all of these benefits off the back of that. And then if you do nothing, and if you sit on the couch in your mind and do nothing, you will slowly fall back into unfitness, and then you will have all of these problems and repercussions because of that. And so in order to move yourself up the continuum, you need to do small incremental things over time, the accumulation of marginal gains, they call it. And so those marginal gains are felt in different ways by different people. And so they need to be opting into whatever it is for them. And that's sort of, what I do is I'm looking for these gains just 1% every day, but I'm looking for them wherever I can find them. And I don't care if they come from science or religion or I wrote 2 things down off a comedy TV show that I was watching today. And I was like, yep, I'm stealing those. Anything that'll give me that 1%. And with that attitude of opting into your own fitness, you're able to find the different things that work for you in the different places. Like tennis is it's a tool that I use. Is it the best tool? Is it the biggest tool? No. But I can tell you it does things that are great for my mental fitness, but I don't necessarily recommend it to you. Maybe yoga's for you, and so there's a whole plethora of different tools that are right for different people, but there are some that are universal as well.
And I have to go there. What are some of the universal ones that really stand out for you?
Well, I sort of split them into internal and external tools. And the external tools are very good at keeping you in your place on the continuum or slightly moving you up. So tennis, for example, for the last couple of weeks, we've been in lockdown and I haven't been able to play tennis. And so my mental fitness has taken a small hit because of the inability to play tennis. And so I go play tennis again today. Wonderful. It keeps me where I'm at and it gives me a small gain. And there are things like, tennis or a lot of the external things that a lot of people do. But then there's the internal things. And the internal things are the things that can actually drive decent change up the continuum. And the internal things are the things that can change your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Because no matter how many water slides I build or rivers I lilo or tennis games I play, it's not really changing my thoughts, my feelings, and my behaviors. And so some of the tools around that are like the ones we know. Meditation is the number one tool for increasing your mental fitness. And it's not just meditation, the practice, it's the practice of the ability to be able to observe your thoughts that you learn through meditation. And that practice gives us little tiny pieces of self-awareness each time we do it. And we can find these little things because you cannot change what you're not aware of. And so when these little things come in, you're like, oh, that's a thing. That's a problem. That's something I do. I'm now aware of that. And now I can go and regulate my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors based on that piece of self-awareness. And so you're like, boom, great. Journaling's another good one for that. And a lot of people do, just straight up journaling. I enjoy the practice of automatic writing, which is simply you put your pen to paper and you just write. What do you write about? Doesn't matter. Can be gibberish, it can be stuff. But what happens is when you bypass the conscious mind, suddenly a whole bunch of the subconscious starts coming out onto the paper. And you're just like, whoa, where did all this come from? And then you're able to look at that and go, oh, okay, that's a thing that I've now become aware of. It's a pattern of behavior I've now understood. So that's another really good tool to be able to figure out your subconscious patterns, your habits, and your behaviors that you want to change. And then once you're aware of those, then you can go put things in place to be able to change those.
And what I love about that idea, it links really closely back to that fitness idea, doesn't it? That again, you have to keep working on it, and if you keep working on it, then you'll see the benefits. What happens when, and we see this, of course, for physical fitness, it's the same for mental fitness. It's like the New Year's resolution. I'm going to make all these changes. I'm going to go to the gym, and I go for, 6 weeks, and then I fall off the bandwagon. And the same thing can happen with mental health, things, right? We go, I'm going to meditate and then fall off.
Yeah. It's because we completely overestimate what major things will do to our lives. We completely overestimate what a new job will do, a new partner will do. We completely, on that. So, for example, lottery winners, and they've done these studies around the world, lottery winners will return to pre-lottery winning happiness levels within 6 months. So, we think that when this happens, then I will be good. And we know scientifically for a long time that that is not the truth. And then we completely underestimate what small marginal gains will do over time. And that's why the physical fitness analogy is so very apt, is that basically, we know that if I said to most of you, I'm sure there's some in here that it won't be the case, but most of you, you need to go run a marathon tomorrow. And most of us would go, oh, no, I can't do that. And there is nothing in the physical world that can get us unfit people ready to run a marathon tomorrow. If we want to run a marathon, we've got to build consistently over time up to a goal. And we, as a society, we're very good at looking for the quick fix. We want a pill. We want a 6-week program. We want a 30-day money-back guarantee. We want all of these things instead of putting in the consistent effort over time. And one of the things about that is it's because we're not wired that way. We are basically set up psychologically to be looking at the short-term gains instead of the longer-term gains. And it's very hard for us to understand what meditating will do for us in the first week, the first month. But I'll tell you what it'll do over a year or 5 years or 10 years, like a lot. It will change your life. But what we tend to do is we tend to go, okay, right, and I'll keep using meditation as an example. Right, I need to meditate. What am I going to do? Okay, so I've read the stuff that says you get into theta brainwaves, but it takes 20 minutes to get into theta brainwaves, so I'm going to need to meditate for at least 30 minutes. And then, right, so I'm going to do 30 minutes a day. And you go from nothing to trying to do 30 minutes a day, and it just fries your brain and you can't do it. And you get, ugh. It's the same as going into the gym, like with my puny little arms, and going, right, I'm going to go in and bench press 100 kilograms today. Like, it's just impossible. And so we've got to go in and go, right, well, day one, we're going to practice with the bar. And we're going to learn technique. And we're going to do the bar for a week. And then only after a week, we put plates on, very small plates. And because what we've got to be doing is when we're looking at these tools, we've got to look at them as lifetime tools. Just like if we're going to do weightlifting, you should be weightlifting up until 90 years old. We know that is probably the best thing that you can possibly do for your body in order to keep it supple and healthy over time. Same with meditation. We need to be looking at it as a lifetime activity. And in order to make it a lifetime activity, we can't just go crazy off the bat, burn out, and then give it up. And that works with pretty much anything. And
that is so powerful, isn't it? And it's also prioritizing. Actually, just before I jump in, so coming back to it is absolutely, isn't it? It's one of those things we've got to prioritize. And I think this falls quite nicely to this whole idea of mental health literacy and why it's important for us to really understand what mental health is and how we become knowledgeable and skilled at looking after our mental health. And one of the things that stands out to me there is that, as we come into COVID right now, that was like being asked to do a marathon the next day. Yeah. Except this marathon has gone on and on and on. And suddenly it looks like the marathon doesn't have an endpoint. So what are you seeing now in terms of how people are coping with their mental well-being?
Yeah, well, I mean, it exposed a lot of people. It exposed a lot of people who were completely unable to cope with it. And the MIQ system at the start was a really interesting one. No one had ever been asked to spend 2 weeks in a hotel room, like not being allowed outside. And it broke a lot of people. And I've done 3 of them. I come and go a little bit. And, to me, technically, MIQ is like lovely. I mean, you're overfed. You're in a nice hotel. People bring you your food every day. You've got unlimited internet. You've got all the time to be able to do whatever you want for yourself. And like, if you can't handle that, then that's a real nice little sign for you to go, oh, maybe I'm not where I need to be. And now, don't get me wrong, there was a woman in my first one who was the room above me, and she had 3 kids under 4. Now, that's going to test anybody's mental health. Like that's a whole nother level. And there are people, obviously, that have been severely affected in their business and in their livelihoods in regards to this, and that's going to absolutely challenge you more than ever. But for the general population, if this stuff has caused you any discomfort, that's a really good thing to be able to look at and be able to go, oh, okay, that's a sign. Now I'm aware of that. What can I work on? What can I put in place to be able to improve that in the future? Like my analogy for because resilience, right? Resilience is a really big thing it's a big thing in the wellness community and all that. And resilience is great. But basically the definition on resilience is being able to get through things, be able to return back to your original state after an event. And so basically the analogy is to be able to take a punch and get back up again and keep going. And we need to be resilient. 100% resilience is great. Back in the old days, in one of the first seasons of The Simpsons, Homer Simpson ends up being a boxer. And in this episode, we find out that he can take a punch like no one else. And so his whole game plan is to take the punches, and then the other person gets tired and he pushes them over and he wins. And so Homer is resilient. He can just keep taking the punches, but in the end, he loses the World Heavyweight Championships basically because he couldn't take any more and he just got punched too many times. And then you have the example of someone like Muhammad Ali, and I have a great gif of this that I use in some presentations, which is him dodging 23 punches in 9 seconds. That's mental fitness. Mental fitness is the ability to be able to see the stuff coming, to be able to glance it off your shoulders and miss it completely. Like that's the idea. The further you move up the continuum, the more time you have. It's like Matrix mode where you're just like, oh, I see that. Whereas before, poof, just smacked you in the face. And again, even Muhammad Ali gets punched in the face, and he has to be resilient to be able to keep going through that. But the idea is we want to be able to dodge as many punches as possible. And so the more pre-training work we put in order to move ourselves up the continuum, the better we are able to cope with any of that stuff when it comes along.
I think, and that's one of those things, isn't it? When we're talking about that mental health, I'll come back, and that mental health literacy, it really is around giving people the tools and the knowledge. And I love what you're saying about continuing to work on it. But in a workplace, what does that look like when even the work itself is changing all the time? It's almost like, the sand is going through your fingers as you're trying to kind of grapple with what's happening next in this COVID world. What are some of the things that workplaces can be thinking about right now?
Well, they can be thinking about their people, first and foremost. Now, unless you are, not even unless. Basically, we came from the Industrial Revolution where it was inputs to outputs. And if we put in this much of this and we got this much here, then we get X at the end. And then if we can make the inputs less and more outputs, then we make more money. We've come a lot from there. And we now live in a world where we know that the human resource is the most fundamental resource in our business. Not only can they make us a lot more money, they can cost us a lot more money. And so if you think about the continuum and then you put yourself somewhere on the continuum, let's just say you're at 50. Well, then if you look at the organization as a whole and you put everybody on that continuum and then you get the average, and let's say the average is at 50. Well, if the average goes down to 30, that'll cost your business millions of dollars in lost productivity, in sick days, in theft, in all sorts of things. If you can move your organization from 50 to 70, people are more effective, they're more efficient, they come up with better ideas, they work better in teams, they work better with your customers, they think of alternate ways to be able to do things in order to save you money, to be able to pivot, and all that sort of carry on. And so a business needs to be prioritizing the mental fitness of their staff. And we've seen a lot of businesses do this. We've seen the ability to work from home, work less hours, work remotely. We've also seen a lot of businesses come in and provide other sort of things, even from getting me in to come and talk to their staff through to putting any other sort of financial or emotional incentives around the business. But basically, the more that they prioritize the mental fitness of their staff, the more that they opt in to be a mentally fit company, the more they are able to cope with crises such as this.
And I think therein lies the challenge, doesn't it? Because, talking about that mental fitness is really critical. And you would see this as probably as much as I do, is you often see organizations that are doing lots of stuff around wellbeing, but actually you end up with these teams or these kind of areas in the organization where it's a lot of doing, but actually the underlying, the way the work is designed, the relationships between managers and staff aren't ideal. And so that makes it really hard then, because, I don't know if you find this, but I find it sometimes as a presenter, you go in, I talk about self-care, and I walk out knowing that I've made that much difference in an organization where there are some bigger fish to fry.
No, absolutely. The best example of that is the Silicon Valley in the 2000s. And that's when sort of workplace culture changed around places like Facebook and Google and Apple and all of that. It's like, come work for us. We've got beanbags. We've got meditation rooms. We've got table tennis tables and free food. And everyone was like, wow, this actually looks like a really good place to work. And, Google had a whole wellness program that was lauded around the world. But if you actually listened to the employees, if they went and played table tennis at lunchtime, their boss would yell over the banister, "What are you doing? Get back to work." You spend too long in the meditation room, you get disciplined for being unproductive. And so there's a real disconnect about what we say we do and what we actually do. And we see that in so many organizations. And one of the problems is that, organizations inherently by nature are top down. And so you've got a lot of people just like you guys. And you guys are the people that I deal with in my general business with organizations, and you're lovely people. You care about all of these other people and you want to do the best you possibly can. And then you put these things in place and you're like, this is what's going to happen. This is how people are going to be better. And then the boss is like, yeah, that's all well and good. We'll sign that off. Okay, cool. But we still need this done by now. We still need this. We still need this. And all of these overarching things, you just get on because of it. And so, unfortunately, it's not really until we get top-down buy-in in organizations that we can see actual systemic change inside of them. And we see this through all sorts of organizations around the world, but we see it through companies in New Zealand as well, like Craig Hudson, for example, the managing director at Xero, lovely man. And he told his mental illness story throughout the company before telling it publicly. And then he put a whole bunch of stuff in place to make sure that him first, and then everyone under him ended up as healthy as he could possibly make them. The same at Perpetual Guardian, where they moved to a 4-day work week. Now, that was, I can't remember the dude's name, but the CEO guy, he was the one that presented that to the board and got it through. And it was the CEO that thought this was a good way to be able to move the business forward. And as usual, the board went, that sounds like we're not going to make as much money and I've got Ferraris to buy. And basically they went, okay, well, we'll get Auckland University to study a trial period. And at the end of that period, they went, oh, well, everybody's happier and we're making more money. Let's keep going. Okay, done. But that is a courageous decision by somebody further up, the highest up, in order to be able to get that as a result. And the cool thing now is we've, not just New Zealand, but around the world, we've already seen these courageous people. We've already had it vetted by universities, and we've seen how well it does. And so it should be an easier buy-in for organizations moving forward. And hopefully, and I think we are starting to see more organizations go in this direction. Why? Because it makes you more money.
And it's, as you say, it's almost sad that we have to use the money conversation as the place to go. But for some people, that will be the game changer. That will be
for all people. For all people. For any, well, the only caveat to that is social enterprise and small business. But any larger company, as soon as it turns private, is beholden to its shareholders for a quarterly return. And so no shareholders, no board meeting is going to sign off on a proposal that costs them more money than they make. And so with well-being, we need to be able to prove, and there's two studies done, one by PricewaterhouseCoopers, one by KPMG, that absolutely show that for every dollar spent on the mental health of your employees to create a mentally healthier workplace, the PwC one returns $2.35 for every dollar put in, and the KPMG one returns £7.11 for every pound that they put in. And so it's somewhere in the middle there. But when it's the two biggest accounting firms in the world saying that, then they have to start listening.
And I think that's a really important point in terms of the destigmatization of this. It is actually realizing that there are business benefits. Now, some of you will know that we are currently doing a piece of research on the new wellbeing manager role and trying to understand a bit more about what that role looks like in organizations. And Jimmy, I have to share with you, I've been naughty and I've been digging in already because I can't help myself to see what some people have been writing. And one of the questions is, what is the biggest misconception about your role as a wellbeing manager? And people have said that it's fluffy, that mental wellbeing is fluffy. And what do you say to that? I mean, again, you've got the numbers to back it up, but are there other?
Well, it is fluffy, and this is the whole thing. It's always been fluffy, and society says that IQ is solid and EQ is fluffy. That's just the way that it is. And so, with any basically brand realignment, is that we have to tell stories around how that is not the case. And so, the Perpetual Guardian story is a great story. Oh, it's fluffy that we care about our people and we want to give them more time off. Oh, cool. Well, here's our financials. Oh, we put a job up recently, a job opportunity. Oh, we got 10,000 applicants for it. Oh, like these are stories, like I was talking to a woman the other day who's a bookkeeper, and she was asking me for some life advice about this, that, and the other thing. And she's like, I just really want to work for Xero. And I'm like, why? She's like, oh, it looks like a great place to work. They look like they care about their people. I was like, well, yeah, I've been in there. I know the people there. Yes, they are. That's wonderful. And so what that does is, Perpetual Guardian, for example, what does a trustees insurance type place? How many people are going to apply for that average job at any one of their competitors? I don't know, 100? Get 100 applicants? Wouldn't it be much better to choose from 10,000 and then be able to pick whoever you want? I remember my friend Vaughan Ferguson, who used to be back in the day the CEO the owner of Vend, and he was saying, yeah, we actually pay below market rate. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he said, yeah, but we've won Workplace of the Year the last 3 years in a row. And so we've got people that want to work for us out the door. And, he wasn't being and trying to pay below rate or anything, but that's the sort of thing, you want to lower your costs. Well, your staff costs are a big one. And so he's getting to pay less because people want to work for him. Mm. And so the more stories we can tell about the actual benefits of a mentally fit workforce, then the more it transitions from being fluffy to being essential.
That's such a good tagline there, going from fluffy to essential. That in itself, I think, it really speaks to why this mental health literacy is so important right now.
Yeah, well, we are in a mental illness epidemic, and it is getting worse. And I could spend the next 10 minutes literally rattling off every statistic I know about it, but you guys understand that, like, we're quite at the moment. It's quite serious. And so, recently the English government just made a minister for wellbeing. Like, it's that big of a deal these days. And so I think any organization that does not have one of you people is like neglectful. It's almost criminal these days, because we know, the World Health Organization says that by the year 2025, 80% of the people on the planet will suffer from a mental health condition in their lifetime. 80. And so if you think you have an organization and you're not going to have to deal with 4 out of 5 of your staff going through some serious stuff in their life, then you're going to end up in all sorts of trouble, not only sort of legally now, but and morally, but financially.
And I think, as you say, that really is the crux of it all. It kind of is the center of the argument, isn't it? Unless we take good notice of this, then, that the ship has sailed, and we've really missed this amazing opportunity now to do something. The other part I wanted to bring up, in terms of this mental health literacy part, is that we're talking about this workforce now, but there's also this generation coming through who are at university right now, for example. They have had to go through COVID and dealing with this, but also they've had greater exposure to mental health literacy opportunities, either because it's on TikTok or because it's in the media more and there's more conversation about it. In terms of those future generations, what do workplaces need to be doing right now to actually be able to, adjust and be ready for these people who are going to be much more comfortable about talking about mental health?
One, they're more comfortable in talking about it, but two, they're more than we ever were and our parents ever were. Being a child growing up in this environment is very, very, very hard, and we don't quite understand it, and we don't quite understand them. Now, there's very few people here on this call, I would suggest, that even had cell phones at high school, let alone social media. I didn't have social media until I was like 25 or something like that. And basically, the way that our society has gone in the last 20 years, pretty much the algorithms are set to destroy you. That in its simplest form. And so they don't have to, but they have to. It's an understanding issue. Like, let's just take social media for a quick example. Social media, in every sort of study I've ever seen, it's bad. It does bad things to you. But you can absolutely use social media in very good ways. And I think I do. I only follow about 200 people. And every one of those person adds beauty and value to my life. I use Reddit, for example, to get a lot of my information. And I subscribe to a lot of particular subreddits so that my feed is filled with stuff that makes me smarter and wiser and helps me improve my mental fitness rather than takes away from it. And so whilst a lot of things are inherently bad by the way that they are set up, they don't have to be if we can have the understanding of how to use them to our benefit instead of our detriment. And so, I mean, it is literacy. And, you know, whilst schools, for example, have started talking more about mental health, I literally do not believe the term mental health or anything in its sphere was used in my entire, 13 years of schooling. I don't remember that in any way, shape, or form. And so we are talking about it a lot more in there now, but we're still not talking about it in a lot of good and constructive ways, where we're still very much talking about mental illnesses rather than mental fitness. And I mean, there's one of my big bugbears, which is, the term mental health is completely lost. When I say Mental Health Awareness Week, the general populace thinks Mental Illness Awareness Week. And that's really the way it is. In that week, we talk about mental illnesses. 4 times in the last year or so, I have heard an anchor on the news, or I've read it in the newspaper, where it said somebody was suffering from mental health. Like, no, that's not the way that works. They may have been suffering from a mental illness, but they were not suffering from mental health. Mental health is not something you suffer from. It is a continuum. And that's what we don't quite understand still. And in order to make this next generation of children and people in the workforce happier and healthier, we have to really start with rebranding the basics. And then it's not about giving people tools. It's about empowering them to go and find their own tools. Because you can, in your businesses, you can bring in yoga teachers, you can have fruit bowls, you can have mindfulness lessons, you can have all sorts of things. But if these people are not opting into them and then using them ongoing, it's a waste of your time and theirs. And even if you force them to go to it and listen to it, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, and then they don't actually take it away and use it, what a waste of time and money. And so the question is, how do we get those people to, understand what they need to be doing, and the understanding that basically they're set up to fail right now in society. And for them not to fail, they have to opt in and be looking for these different solutions. And then when you provide them with some tools, they're like, thank you. That's wonderful. That's an interesting tool. And now I'm using it forever.
So it's funny, as you're talking, the word that I've just written down is self-efficacy. It sounds to me like we're trying to build in people is that self-efficacy of going, you have the knowledge and the power and the tools within you. And if you find a motivation that resonates for you around this and those tools that resonate for you and they improve your mental fitness, go for it. Those are the ones that we encourage you to focus on.
Yeah, I use the term radical ownership, and that is the understanding that the trauma is not your fault. Like we are, society is set up for us to fail. The trauma is probably caused by somebody else, something else. The trauma is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility and nobody else's. Because you're not even likely to get an apology from the person or the thing that caused you a trauma, let alone have them heal it for you. Because it's a very harsh and stark comment, but it is the reality of it. And so we have to get people to understand that if they would like to move themselves up the mental fitness continuum, and they should when you explain it to them, yeah, I obviously want to be at this end and not that end. Well, if that's the case, then you need to do the work. And the analogy is kind of like a personal trainer. Like, they can give you the exercises. They can show you how to do the exercises.
Thanks again for listening today. It's been great to have you along. If you're keen to join the Revolutionaries of Wellbeing, head to Row Wellbeing, that's ROW Wellbeing.com, and follow the links to sign up. If you're in our community, thanks again, and we look forward to catching up with you really soon.